0.
You rolled a
10.
0.
Oh.
Ooh, okay. So I think that we're going to count that as a 10, right? So
Yep.
Yeah.
Design an encumbrance system that even encumbrance haters will want to use. Added by listener Wulf Mungus.
Oh, this is going to be hard because I am an encumbrance hater. Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
I'm Andy Rao.
And this week we are joined by Toby.
Hi, I'm Toby.
Hey, it's really nice to have you here. So we met actually at the Roll for Topic Con that happened over the summer. You came and you immediately dove in. I think it was the first time that Andy and I had met you before, but you just kind of, dove in and started playing games with us. So that was pretty cool. I'm curious, I guess, what did you think of that convention?
No pressure. We're only the people that organize.
Yeah,
it,
that's
so,
fine.
You know,
Yeah,
no
pressure.
Right.
Tell us how good it was.
Yeah, don't pull any punches.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. It was so I was invited to the conference.
Yeah.
Con. Convention.
Just con. Who knows what it stands for?
Yeah. By Tim Saucer. It was very kind enough to invite me, and then you guys accepted me, which was great. And it was the first time I had played at a table, rolling dice, in 2 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it, and it really kickstarted my GM brain back into that space.
Mm-hmm.
I find that, for a while I was just copying adventures or maybe running something online that was pretty brief, but then I really started thinking about pulling apart games and I don't know, all of those fun things that you guys discuss.
That's really great. Yeah. So I guess let's talk a little bit about your gaming history too. So I guess what have you played? What are you playing right now?
Yeah. So I started with 5th edition D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Actually pulled Reddit, which is a dangerous thing to do for a GM.
Yes.
Got very, very lucky and found an incredible GM. This was when I was doing my dissertation and procrastinating and decided I would much rather spend time playing D&D than writing a thesis.
Yeah.
Pulled Reddit, found a DM, one other player from Reddit, and then a collection of my friends. The one player turned out to be not great and was ejected. So I got that experience pretty early.
Wow, you jumped right into the deep end of the gaming topic.
Yeah. We really did. So that was about maybe 8 years ago. And then played D&D 5th edition for a long time. Started running my games because it was the only way to play the game a lot of times. And since then have ventured out to a lot of different games. So kind of the most notable ones are probably I was running a Traveler game.
Yeah.
Very loosely. Which was very fun and I think my players enjoyed it. We ultimately transitioned that to Savage Worlds. So we took the story that we had built and just ported to a different rule set that fit the players a little bit better.
Interesting.
And right now I'm running kind of like a short mini campaign in Symbaroum, which I'm really, really enjoying.
Oh, nice. That's great.
I'm intrigued by your success in transitioning a campaign out of one rule set into, a fairly different rule set. Was that, but that worked?
I have a really great set of players. They are just ready to roll with things and they're very forgiving. And we just have a really nice time. So yeah, we went from arguably one of the most simulation heavy rule systems, Traveler. There were even jokes at Roll for Topic Con about how simulationist it is, to something kind of really light and more narrative focused like Savage Worlds, where you are very heroic, right? Coming from Traveler where you're not necessarily heroic, I think my players wanted to be more heroic. It fit nicely with what they wanted.
Did you find that you may have sort of answered this already, but did you find that the tone shifted because of the rules? Were your players suddenly able to do stuff that they had wanted to do but really couldn't? Or was it more that it just made it easier to do stuff? They weren't swimming against the current.
I think it made it a lot easier because I could write encounters that fit the style of play that they wanted a lot more easily.
Mm.
So, I would write Traveler encounters and we would use that rule set, but I would always have to pull punches or something like that because Traveler's not very forgiving. But Savage Worlds, yes, it's very swingy, but that adds a lot of really fun flavor, and the Benny system can keep you alive pretty strongly. So I think it just became a lot easier.
Yeah. Did you go through a process of so I know character creation in Traveler is a whole game unto itself. I guess when you were making the characters in Savage Worlds, yes, how did you approach that process? Was it just you fill it out, figure it out, or did you leave stuff from the Traveler character sheets and just say this is no longer a part of this character anymore?
Yeah, so the reason we started with Traveler really is because of the character creation. Mm-hmm. I love that character creation system so much, but I like this idea where you don't have full control of your backstory, where in Traveler, you may want to go into a particular branch of the military, but it turns out you didn't make it, right? You just aren't cut out to be a spy or whatever. And so I really like that aspect. Now, more to your question, when we transition to Savage Worlds, because it's more narrative, more narratively focused, we really just tried to transfer over the essence of the characters. And in that way, we didn't worry too much about if you could do this before or that before. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it's a sci-fi system, we're playing in the sci-fi genre, you don't have to worry about what spells you have. And,
yeah,
these things aren't such a big deal. You're essentially just people. Gear, yeah, you may want to worry about balance, but Savage World doesn't care at all about balance. So I don't have to care about balance.
Yeah.
I guess this is a question for both of you. I have been just looking at the calendar and noting how fast the end of the year is coming up, and I've just been thinking, what did I think or muse on or foolishly promise on air on this podcast that I was going to run this year?
Yeah,
that I haven't run yet. I'm just curious, Toby, and then Chris, I'd like to hear from you too. What's kind of on your plate here? Is there something you'd like to get in this year yet, gaming wise?
Well, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, since getting involved with Roll for Topic, my stack of unplayed RPGs has maybe doubled or tripled.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is fanboying on the channel or what, but I heard about Brindlewood Bay at Roll for Topic Con, and I still haven't played it. I've read the rule set, and I actually got a little crazy and thought I could maybe move the theorize mechanic into my current game because, lots of maybe some of the best campaigns that I've either listened to or seen have some aspect of mystery in them that finding information is really core to the game that we play. And I just love the theorize mechanic so much that I was hoping I could maybe transition in. It didn't work very well. So I'd love to play some Brindlewood Bay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also have another stack of books thanks to you guys. My wallet is slimmer and my book stack is heavier.
You are so welcome. I have no regrets. Yeah. Oh, Brindlewood Bay is a good answer all the time to what do you want to play next? And strangely, this probably says more about me than anything. Something about Thanksgiving to Christmas makes me want to consume some mystery, and especially murder mysteries and stuff. So that might be one that we just have to put together. I don't know if people are around over the Christmas holiday or something like that, but yeah, so that's a good one. Andy, as you alluded to, there's probably audio of me saying somewhere I can't wait to do this in 2022. Yes. Yeah. And certainly not a lot of that happened. The one thing that I'm really looking forward to, and I don't know if we've officially talked about it on air, we are going to do our Build a Dungeon, Play a Dungeon again this year. So Toby, I don't know if you've listened to our back catalog at all, but every year we do we have one design session where we design a dungeon and then we do an actual play of it. The intent being that the people that do the actual play don't actually listen to the design design sessions, so you can kind of see like how those ideas get generated and then actually get kind of played through. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing, before the holidays hit in earnest. What about you, Andy? I guess answer your own question.
Well, I remember, I don't know if I said it on the podcast or just in conversation with someone, but I kind of want to do something with vampires this year.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't really done a vampire game in forever. So I don't know if that would be the actual, vampire role-playing game, or if it would just be one of many games that, highlight vampires in a major way, like Night's Black Agents or something.
Mm.
I don't know. I'm kind of excited about it. I guess the time is, running short here, but I think I'm going to try, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I have a lot of time off, over that time. I'm going to see if I can get at least a one shot on this vampire theme done before the end of the year. So that would be about the only, New Year's resolution I will have successfully accomplished. So I've got to, check off at least something before 2023 starts.
Is there, I feel like I should know this. Is there a Blade tabletop role-playing game? Do you know that, like the Wesley Snipes Blade?
Yeah, I would say there's a fairly large number of games that you could have a pretty Blade-like experience in.
Mm-hmm.
By default, Vampire, the role-playing game, is leans a little more into the like Anne Rice territory than the, action Blade territory. But I don't think there's anything really stopping you from going full Blade and Vampire if you want.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Toby, do you have any experience with Vampire or anything?
No. So I haven't played any Vampire tabletop role-playing games, and I like Vampire the Masquerade or any of those. I was intrigued by them for a while, and I thought to myself, I would need a really specific player set to pull this off in a nice way. Some of the themes in vampire fiction are, edgier than others, obviously.
Yeah.
And it would involve a lot of trust in your players and people who are really interested in that.
Yeah, Vampire and some of the other games that White Wolf put out has always struck me as a pretty good example of, like, there is overlap between what the game designers want to do and what players want to do with the game. There's like a heavy overlap, but there is also a diversion. So I think if you read those core rule books, the designers want you to experience, plumb the depths of human horror and desperation and addiction and, these kind of weighty themes. And, at least anecdotally, an awful lot of people play them more like, I am this awesome ninja vampire and I've got a trench coat and here are my katanas, that sort of thing. So, it speaks well of the game and its kind of sister games that you can do either of those extremes, I think. But
yeah, it's like they want you to play Interview with a Vampire, but you end up playing What We Do in the Shadows.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so, reading those books, I found there's so much lore there. Yeah. And I don't know how you would possibly prepare your players for that. Because, what I found is, yes, there are a few touchstones that you can provide, and some people have seen them or some people have read them. But the lore around, like, vampire houses or, I don't know what they're actually called, covenants or something. That's what just...
clans and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like the way they write the rule books, you really want to lean into those kind of faction style of play.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know enough about it.
Yeah. Do they give my mind went immediately to Blades in the Dark, as it often does. But Blades in the Dark style factions and gangs and stuff might be a fun way to think about. Yeah, the different clans and families and houses and stuff like that. Something I appreciate about Blades in particular is that there isn't a lot of detail given to each of those. Like there's sort of insinuations that you can pick up based on the names of stuff. But if I had to memorize the lineage of who is the leader of each of these houses, that's just that's where my brain is I can't interact with the fiction at that level for a tabletop game. Reading a novel, sure, that might be different, but
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. I do feel like we're in sort of a golden age of games like Blades that instead of giving you the hundreds of pages of setting backstory and the NPCs and things like that, they really, the ultimate example might be Mork Borg. It throws out a few teasers and trusts that you'll fill in, the fairly large blank spots on the map and in the setting with your own stuff. And
Yeah.
I guess it's a personal thing, I guess, whether that appeals to you or if you enjoy, doing those deep dives into the giant overwrought settings of the 1990s role-playing games.
Yeah. Yeah, games these days are more just vibe checks than anything. So yeah. All right, let's transition to our topic at hand. So this is design an encumbrance system that even encumbrance haters will want to use, and this was added by a listener, Wulf Mungus, who I think we met on Discord a while back. So Wulf, if you're still listening, thanks for adding this topic. We finally got to it, probably a year later or so. Yeah, maybe we could start by let's go around and say, like, are you pro encumbrance systems or con encumbrance systems? And I will say, in general, I'm against them. So I guess, what about you, Toby?
Yeah, I historically have been against them, and I think all of my players are probably against them. However, I did play in Andy's Twilight 2000 game where encumbrance was a key part of it, and it didn't feel as bad as I thought. I did enjoy that.
Yeah. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, I think similar to you guys, I'm pretty anti-encumbrance, but I'm super open to finding an encumbrance system that's fun. Mm-hmm. So, like, traditionally, I usually mostly just ignore it and just use common sense to decide if you're carrying too much junk and if it's having a negative effect on your ability to do stuff. Yeah. I started, my gaming hobby, career, whatever, playing Rollmaster, which has a really detailed encumbrance system. And that was one of the first, I was learning Rollmaster. I didn't know anyone else who gamed, so I was learning entirely through the rules. And that was one of my first experience with realizing this is a part of the game that is, doesn't pay off for me or any of us. So we're just going to hand wave it. So it's a little bit of a watershed moment for me. Like, hey, I can ignore part of this. Now that's, of course, such a common idea. It's usually actually printed in the opening pages of most games that you can ignore parts of the game if you want. But
yeah. Yeah, I guess maybe we should define encumbrance like somewhat, right? So we can know what we're designing ahead of time. Yeah, so like when I think about this, I'm specifically sort of thinking about like the stuff that you can carry, both in terms of weight and shape, I guess, if that makes sense, right? So like you sort of have room on your person for one shield, and maybe you could put one on your back too if you wanted to, but carrying 3 shields makes no sense, even if you could carry that amount of weight. Yeah. Does that make sense as a starting point for us?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Encumbrance is, a way of tracking what you are wearing and holding and carrying and what effect that has on the game experience. Okay,
cool. And then something that we've learned from doing these design challenges is that like we should probably pick like a genre too that we're going to stick in. So I'm kind of intrigued by not doing like the typical fantasy setting. Like Toby, you mentioned sci-fi, and I think that might actually be like a fun place to explore this, right? So like you might have a little computer that contains all of the world's knowledge on it, right? But it's not going to take up that much room. So, I guess how does that sit with you? Or is anyone else thinking about something else? We could also do vampires. I guess we talked a lot about vampires.
So the thing with encumbrance is the reason my mind went to fantasy is because I feel like that's the genre where it is an integral part of the game that you are accumulating stuff. Mm-hmm. Like in a sci-fi game, maybe you're running a game where you're accumulating stuff, but probably you're not gathering up treasure and new equipment all the time the way you are in a fantasy game. So I have no objection to any genre we want to do here, but my mind went to fantasy because all of my clashes with inventory and encumbrance have been a result of that fantasy accumulation grind that most games put at the center of the experience, honestly. Any reactions to that?
So when my mind goes to fantasy, so I will say I would rather not do fantasy, and let me explain kind of why.
Yeah.
Because you get a bag of holding. I mean, I know this is like D&D specific, but the bag of holding essentially breaks the entire encumbrance system in D&D, however light it may be, to the point where, I just don't track this anymore. So I think avoiding like a breaking item or a breaking piece of magic like that would be useful. It would like force us to come up with something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good parameter to put on it. Yeah.
So what about the sci-fi? And
sci-fi, or I kind of like the Old West. That's kind of a fun one. Crates of dynamite and
Old West. Yeah,
yeah.
You sold me just by saying Old West. Yeah. Okay. So if we're thinking Old West, like like let's again put a few more parameters. Is this like is your adventuring party? Are they in a town? Are they out in the wilderness? Like, are they pioneers here, or are they in a town doing stuff?
I vote for that travel has to be a big part of the experience, because I think travel interacts with encumbrance in pretty unique and pretty interesting ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, without having to pack up all your stuff.
Right.
I mean, you just store it in a house somewhere or something.
Yeah, you just run back to your house to pick it up rather than
Right. My touchstone here is always something like Deadwood, and so that doesn't involve quite as much travel.
Yeah, that's what I think about oftentimes too. Or Oregon Trail, right? Which is like a little bit different, but like, there's still, I mean, that has talk about an encumbered system that I hate, like, right. Like tracking how much food you have. And then like the random encounters that are just like, and now you're all dead. Like that's,
yeah.
Okay. So what are some ways to make it fun, right? So like I think there is a small amount, depending on your personality type, there is a either small amount or a large amount of fun in doing like the spreadsheet style stuff of like, like I can only carry 100 pounds or 200 pounds. And I go back and forth. But I don't think any of us on this podcast right now are really into that style of it. So
yeah, more power to those players. And I know people that are like that. But for me, here's my spreadsheet of stuff and how many pounds each one costs. And you can see I'm exactly 1 pound under the threshold for taking a penalty to dexterity. So we're good to go.
Yeah. It's like the Elden Ring or Dark Souls, like are you underneath a certain percentage so you can roll good.
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I guess Toby, maybe we should have checked in with you on this. How fluent are you in video games? I guess that'll help Andy and I temper where we go.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
But if we talk about anything, Diablo style inventory system, Tetris style, that kind of makes sense to me. I know that in Elden Ring you have to get good, but I never got good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, so I did actually want to start with the Diablo style inventory system, because I think this is an encumbrance system that is both frustrating and I find uniquely satisfying. The like organizing what you have in a grid in some fashion. So for those who have not played Diablo or these styles of game, you basically have an inventory that's made up of like 20 different squares, right? And so different items will take up different amounts of spaces in those squares, and there is you can kind of rearrange them too, almost like Tetris pieces as well. So like a shield might take up 6 of those, right? Whereas a staff only takes up 3, but they're both vertical, right? So you need to kind of like arrange stuff.
There is a real satisfaction in like making your inventory box efficiently, if you use all the boxes efficiently.
Yeah. And like Resident Evil has this as well, too, right? Like those, like, so this is a pretty common thing in video games, I think, for memory reasons, right? Like in earlier games, but now it's just sort of, I think it's accepted as a way to, like to give you another little thing to play with. But okay. So if
Diablo, can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Can we talk for another minute about Diablo? Because I think as one
we can talk for another hour about Diablo.
Okay. So the other part of Diablo's inventory system is that it uses slots, right? Mm-hmm. So you have, so it fiercely restricts the number of things you can have equipped, and it's somewhat arbitrary But there's a satisfaction to it as well. You can have 2 rings. There are 2 slots for rings, and you can put a ring in either or both or none of those spots, but you can't ever wear 3 rings. It's only 2. There is 1 slot for a neck piece or something like that. So if you have a necklace, you can put it there. And I have seen that kind of slot system implemented in a few RPGs, like I think Torchbearer does it and a few others, but I suspect the kind of enforced abstractness of that makes it less satisfying to games that have at least some root in simulationism, right? Because it's not really realistic that you could only have 1 knife, right?
Yeah.
What if I have this way to hold 5 knives? Diablo doesn't let you do that, but a role-playing game would let you do that.
Yeah.
The alternative to that is something like attunement points, or I'm not really sure what the language around this is, but you can only have equipped, or you can only be attuned to so many magical items or high power items that are really the ones that maybe we're concerned with anyways.
It's an attunement, and then also, I think there's, you could almost make an argument that like specializing in certain weapon types and stuff too, like that's almost like another way of limiting that, or even just having having 2 hands, right? You don't have 3 hands, so you can't you can't shoot a bow and hold a sword at the same time.
Would you guys be bothered by say you're playing, okay, we're Old West or whatever, so how much does it bother you if there is no limit of any kind on inventory, etc.? Think, whatever, in Elden Ring, you can have 500 maces in your inventory. There's no, until you try to equip them, there's no penalties there. Does that completely freak you out if that were to happen in a tabletop game?
If I had a 6-shooter that had infinite bullets, that would bother me greatly. Okay. But if I have a bow and arrow that has infinite like arrows, that doesn't bother me. So figure that one out. But like there's something about the 6-shooter having that limitation. Like you can fire off 6, but then you gotta stop to reload. That's entertaining. All right. And there's a lot of tension that can be had there too.
The alternative is you have 1,000 6-shooters in your inventory and you just like cycle through them, whipping them as you finish.
That's a very video game approach to inventory, and there's many video games that do essentially just that, right? Or versions of that. I wanted to say, I don't want this to be the video game discussion podcast, but I did have one other experience with inventory in a game recently that I think was fun when it was designed, but was horribly frustrating today. I replayed an old Infocom adventure called Planetfall, and like a lot of those old text adventures, you part of the puzzle of the game is managing your inventory because you have really tight limits on how much stuff you can hold, and so a fair amount of the gameplay of Planetfall was like dropping stuff so to make room to pick up stuff I needed, and then remembering where I had dropped stuff, and just doing the big juggle of like, I could pick up to pick up this, I have to drop these 2 things, and you need to remember where you're going to need things, and you can get into spots where you don't have the thing you need, and you just have to restart the game. And I remember in Zork, another Infocom game, they went even further in making this a part of the gameplay by having stuff you leave out be stealable by a thief that was present in the game.
Yeah.
So it was a nerve-wracking experience to manage your inventory. And replaying that today, I found that maddening and the opposite of fun. But I could still see the glimmer of like I could see the glimmer of that original appeal of making that such a core part of just like literally navigating the game world.
Yeah. I think I also played Planetfall sort of around the time that you were playing it, and I found that to be like, it just made me want to turn the game off, right? Yeah. Like, and it's and I think when I was younger, that might have been fun in some way, but it felt like a detriment to the game. Yeah, like, yeah, very much a detriment. Yeah, and I think that's, like, just tying it back to the topic at hand, like, I'm kind of wondering if that's part of the problem with encumbrance stuff, for me at least, is that, like, that mental load of trying to keep track of those things, when, like, a character sheet in D&D, for example, like, has no great way to really track, like, what your total is, right? Like, so you can sort of shunt that off to a computer, right, if you're playing with D&D Beyond or whatever, but it's just like, then you kind of turn it into, like, this again, the spreadsheet problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's something to be said, if something is irritating enough that you're looking for tools to alleviate it, why is it in the game?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe it just has to have a compelling reason to be in the game. If a lot of your players are looking for cheat ways to get around it, right?
Yeah.
With D&D Beyond or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I know we've recorded an episode somewhere in our back catalog where we sort of talked about, like, ways to make that part a little bit more interesting. I want to say it actually might have been Tim Saucer who either came up with the topic or was on it, but we, thinking about, like, the like, what items you're bringing into a dungeon, stuff like that. But anyway, so let's pause there, though. I want to get back to, like, let's actually design something, right? So, like, I think we've talked about a lot of stuff. The thing that I'm kind of hearing coming out of this is, like, let's try to, like, maybe think about a Diablo style, like, grid system for inventory. I think there's a way we could design that could be fun. Does that sound like a good approach for us? It does. Yeah. Okay.
Can I throw out something to react to?
Yeah.
So, Wild West RPG, tell me why this wouldn't be fun or workable. When the game starts, you can have anything that makes sense for your character concept. If you could picture your character in a movie, if they would have it in the movie, you have it on your sheet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do any tracking. You don't do any tracking of inventory. And if you need or want something, you roll to see if you've got it, with the roll being modified by how close it is to how much it fits into the vibe of the theme of your character. So if you're a gunslinger,
mm-hmm.
and you run out of ammo, you have a pretty good shot of rolling and discovering that you have more ammo in your backpack. But if you're a preacher, you have a big penalty you're highly unlikely to get ammo, ammo when you need it.
That's fascinating.
I would just like to hear some reactions as to whether that would work or not.
My first reaction to that is, that sounds like a lot of fun, would add a lot of tension, and I'd also want to have some sort of rule in there for, like, you have, like, three chances per session where you just have it, right? Like, no matter what, something like that, and then maybe some sort of cap on, like, the number of times you can go to your magical bag to see what's in there.
Yeah, no, I really like the abstraction of that, because I find even tracking equipment can be kind of irritating, aside from maybe a few key items or items that are really integral to my character concept.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see augmenting this style of, narrative tension building encumbrance, if we want to, whatever we want to call it, with, here are 3 items that are, core to your character. And maybe that tackles Chris's idea that, like, I should be able to have 3 items or some number of items per session. Well, these are just the items that your character is known to have, and they are integral to your character. So I really like that. And yeah, high level, I like the abstraction of it and the tension that it would bring. So yeah, it's cool. Cool idea.
Yeah.
Here's what it wouldn't do. This would not give you the satisfaction if this is a game where you're traveling. So whatever, maybe you're playing Native Americans traveling around, or you're playing a gunslinger riding through the West or something. If travel is a part of this, some part of making travel fun is planning well and packing well for it, right? And part of the risk and reward is, deciding, how many things of food do we need, and then hoping that your estimate is correct, right? So a fully abstract system, it would remove that element. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I I like this, and I think there's a way that we can tackle that. So one thing I was thinking about was ways that you can augment your inventory. So this is something that a gunslinger would do by having a holster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I can hold 2 pistols instead of 1 or something like this. So if we take that idea and we like draw it out, well, before you prepare to travel, you may get some horses or something to carry your gear. And now you have this inventory augmentation where you can now up that number of guaranteed items that you have. I'm guaranteed to have this many rations because I put them on in the pack horse or things like that. So
that's interesting. So would you have, so you'd have your character, like, would you have your character, so like maybe they get 3 things, right? So maybe they choose, I want to have 1 horse, I want to have 1 pistol or a 6-shooter, and I want to have 1 really cool hat, right? Like those are my three things, right? So, but then the horse itself then also has sort of like three slots there too, or
maybe the horse is a bonus or a penalty to your die roll to get stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so maybe if you bring a wagon, you have a +10 to all rolls to see if you can find it in your inventory. But if you just have like a sickly pony on its last legs, it's a +2 to your rolls.
Yeah, it's a -2.
Yeah, I'm just throwing that out for reaction.
Okay, so my one reaction is right. So like, I think this is really fascinating to me because it's again doing this sort of like Blade style flip where it's like, rather than plan out exactly what you have, you sort of have slots and then you're using them up as you're going. So like, I think there needs to be like an imposition of some sort of maximum of this, right? So you can't just sort of like keep rolling, right? Like, so there's either some sort of penalty every time you roll that happens, like maybe a day goes by, right? Or, or like you can only do it a certain number of times, 5 or 6, something like that. Yeah, but then it would be sort of up to the GM, I think, to modulate like how that interacts with the narrative too, right? If you're trying to make a cross-country voyage, right, you might have 50 things to try, but like you also have to prepare for a year's worth of travel.
I do like and I think as you mentioned, I think Blades does it like this, like if you can check it off and consume like an inventory item to have it give you an effect, but I think a lot of the stuff is kind of a one-use thing, right? You check off armor, you get to reduce or remove some consequences, but then you've checked off your armor.
Yeah,
which doesn't work simulationist wise, very well, but is very satisfying to do in the game. Like, I've got armor, I'm going to check this off. It gets me out of this killing blow for free.
Yeah.
So I like that, but it's dependent on, a really limited number of things that are consumable, even if we wouldn't normally, you wouldn't find them in the consumables section of the, the item listing in your rulebook. Or like does it make sense to, you consume your 6-shooter by using it to win a fight?
I think I sort of like the idea of going back to Toby's sort of original thought. Like you have a few things that are like defined about your character, and like those don't change, right? So you have a holster, like unless there's something that happens in game that takes your holster away. So like you always have the capability of holding 2 guns, right? Like, yeah, like that's just something that is true about your character because you've sort of decided. And like the cool hat example that I mentioned, like, right, like maybe that gives you bonuses to charisma checks and stuff like that, or like, the sun can't get in your eyes, whatever you want to design as part of your Old West system. But I like that as sort of like the base, like you're as you're doing your character creation, you're sort of picking out these things that are true about your character. And then from those, your options for like what you have access to follows, and like the ability for you to pull that thing as needed. So yeah, like going back to your example, the preacher would not have bullets, but the gunslinger would not have a Bible, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. I think this sounds fun. It sounds fun to me. Like, do we like the idea enough? If so, I think we should come up with a few more examples of maybe those.
Yeah, I do want to open the table though. I threw that out as something to react to, not necessarily as the thing that we needed to craft. So are either of you guys kind of sitting on a different wacky idea for inventory and encumbrance?
I probably have like 3 or 4, but we also only have like 4 minutes, so I think we're gonna have to stick
for sure
stick with what we have. Yeah.
Yeah, I really
right,
like what we've discussed. I think it
what
sounds.
are there things that are fun about inventories and encumbrance that aren't covered by this system?
I think maybe some of the pre-planning, right? So like scratching that itch of pre-planning, but that also might be covered just in the like, let's figure out which of our like character traits we want to have as a party. That like that kind of meta conversation of, we don't need 5 gunslingers who all have holsters, right? We need to have like, whatever, the preacher, I don't even know like who the other characters would be in this. So,
But alternatively, you can go and augment your party, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to pick up a wagon, right? And now because I have this wagon, I get 3 more or 5 more like guaranteed slots.
Do you guys think it's fun to let people carry too much and then penalize them for it in some way?
No.
Like our Diablo slot system does not allow you to carry too much. It does not possible.
Yeah, I think I don't like having penalties for that, because that invites, I think, people to try to like find ways to weasel out of them pretty easily. Like, and also I don't like having like bonuses if you don't carry as much, right? So it's just sort of like this is what it is, right? Like you can use it or lose it, I think, is a better way to approach that.
So here's maybe I don't want to take this too far off, but here's another thought that we could. So suppose that number of items that are integral to your character, you're allowed to pick. And so you can say, this is a little bit maybe like from Tales in the Loop, where your age gives you, like, if you're young, you have a lot more luck. If you're older, you have more skills. So if you pick fewer items that are integral to your character, you can roll more often, or you can roll for maybe more substantial items to maybe have.
Yeah.
And if you load out your character with a lot of guaranteed items, you don't have those opportunities to potentially roll and hopefully find something. So this is a way to scratch that itch of, min-maxing your inventory in some way.
I do like that trade-off. That is a compelling. It calls to mind the way that card deck building games do kind of card hand management. If you've played any of those games, you like when you are first learning a game, you're excited to be adding all sorts of cards to your hand, and then as you get out of your beginner phase, you realize that you're paying a price for having a lot of cards in your hand, and that is you're less likely to get any particular card right when you draw at the beginning. So then the incentive begins, like what can I drop out of this deck to kind of refine it down to just the stuff that works best for me. And so Toby, what you're talking about, it scratches a little bit of that itch of you can have more stuff, or you can have more control of what you've got or less control. It's kind of you need to decide where your balance is, where's fun for you.
Yeah. I really like the idea of a character concept too in this, where you carry nothing with you and your character sort of always trusts they can grab the thing at hand. Yeah, it's like they just reach into a barrel and it's like, oh, and there's the sword I needed, or like whatever. I think that would be really fun. And then you have one person who's like wearing a loincloth, and then another person who's walking around like some sort of tank with outfitted with all sorts of stuff. So.
Are we full circle back to Dark Souls now?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, we should call it here. We've been talking for a little bit. This has been a really good conversation, and it has made me excited about encumbrance. So I guess we designed something that even haters will like. So I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up stuff, but I guess before we dive into that, any like last thoughts? Like, here's your 1 sentence chance to flip everything on its head.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, I'll just say like D&D did it perfectly, so just do that. So
yes.
Yeah.
First edition Rolemaster solved the encumbrance problem. Why would we do anything different than that?
Yes. Yeah. Roll for Topic is part of the Roll for It Media podcasting network. Our sister show, The Splat Book, with John Corey and Kyle Latino, continues to be amazing. They are doing a series about their personal appendix ends right now. And I think the new episode just dropped or will have dropped soon. So take a listen to that. They've been picking out books that they particularly like, books and stories, and reading them beforehand and sort of doing a little book club discussion, which is super great. So you can go listen to them at thesplatbook.com. But yeah, I think that's about it. Andy, you got anything else for us?
I don't think so. Just that you're talking up the Splat Book an awful lot lately in your closer. Yeah. So I mean, the Splat Book's cool, but let's not overdo it. I kid. It is a wonderful show.
Yes, it's really good. Cool. I think that's it. Toby, thank you so much for coming on. This was wonderful to get a chance to talk with you about this. So I'm hopeful that we can get a game of Brindlewood Bay in at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me, and thanks for letting me come and letting me be part of this Roll for Topic thing. It's been such a nice opportunity to flex those GM muscles that that only come from soundboarding ideas off of other people. And I recently moved to Ann Arbor and lost a lot of those contacts, and it's just nice to have a place to geek out about weird things that so few people know anything about or are concerned with, or it's growing, but no, it's so nice, and you guys are so welcoming, and thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you it's so wonderful having you be part of the community too. You've already brought a lot to the community, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, now I'm feeling very good about life in general. But yeah. All right. Well, I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
And remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.